Ironically though, I noticed that I was also very, very annoyed by certain sounds. It usually used to happen when I was working on my computer, and this person would make a specific sound that would freak the hell out of me. I would get very angry, very frustrated, and I thought, well, if I'm experiencing this myself, why not try to make a case study on myself? Hatred of sounds. This is what misophonia has been directly translated to. A more clear definition is to have intense emotional and physiological reactions to hearing certain sounds. So this is a condition called misophonia. Misophonia is not a diagnosis. It is not in the manual of mental health disorders. However, it is very debilitating and very upsetting for those who experience it. I was asked by a viewer of this channel whether I would do a video on misophonia. And when I first heard of it a couple of months ago, I barely knew what it was. And some of you were very kind to help me out with that, so I really appreciate it. Growing up, whenever my dad used to eat and make chewing sounds, when my grandma used to constantly move her feet. But when I was away from these sounds, I was okay. One of my coworkers used to make throat clearing noise every few seconds all the time. It made me move my job. Another one long time ago was typing noises by a person I used to study with. On a scale from 0, which is not bothered by this at all, to 10, extremely bothered by the sound, at the peak it was 10 for these sounds. It gave me anxiety, and the recent trigger I was having, I was anxiety-ridden for days. It would also make me extremely angry, so I was masking the trigger sound with noise machines. I used to walk away if it was possible, avoid it with headphones, or just leave the house. It did make me calm down as I wasn't around the noise, but anxiety started a lot of times in anticipation of hearing the noise again in the future. Misophonia is a condition that's very debilitating, very limiting for people, and a lot of people who suffer from this go to great length to try to avoid sounds. For example, like chewing, scratching, humming, clearing throats, and so on. But it can also be sounds like construction work, traffic, planes flying over your house, and so on. So people who experience these sounds experience a lot of strong emotional reactions such as agitation, anger, frustration, disgust, anxiety, and some even go on to develop panic attacks. Unfortunately, however, it is not clear why misophonia happens. So there are a lot of different theories out there trying to figure out whether some people have more sensitivity to certain sounds than others. Some theories claim that misophonia is rooted in interpersonal problems, that when we experience certain sounds that we're annoyed by from certain people, we may have a difficult history with these people. Some think that it is caused by trauma. So there are a lot of different hypotheses about what causes misophonia, and a lot of treatment approaches try to see if they are a good fit for treating misophonia. We do know, however, that misophonia does co-occur alongside anxiety and depressive disorders. So people who have generalized anxiety disorder, for example, or OCD, also may experience misophonia. However, it is not known whether the misophonia happens as a condition in itself or whether it is a symptom of anxiety or depression. The research for whether specific treatments for misophonia are effective is very limited. Usually the studies that are made are very small, so very few people participate in those studies, so we can't really generalize based on those. Also, some of the designs of these studies are not of good qualities. However, a lot of different treatments are offered for misophonia. For example, cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, which is trauma therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, which is to ground yourself, be present, and live by your values despite difficulties, and in this case, difficult sounds. Then there is interpersonal metacognitive therapy, which is not the same as metacognitive therapy, MCT, but it works on dealing with interpersonal issues and how to work on misophonia from that angle. So the question is, does metacognitive therapy work for misophonia? And to be honest with you, there isn't much research out there that shows whether it is a good fit or not. So in this video, we're going to walk through this together, and we're going to make some assumptions and hypotheses I'm going to share with you based on my knowledge on metacognitive therapy and the experiences that I've had so far with misophonia. including the case study and the experimentation I've done on myself. So when I was researching the types of treatments and approaches for dealing with misophonia, I noticed that most of them were not trying to make the reaction in itself go away. So they were not trying to control whether we would get triggered by specific sounds or not, but rather they tried to teach people to learn to cope with this emotional reaction that they were having. So if they felt angry or disgust or anxiety, they would learn to cope with that emotional reaction instead of avoiding, instead of going out of their way to avoid this trigger, and that ending up controlling their lives. This led me to think that metacognitive therapy is, of course, a very effective treatment in dealing with triggers. Whether these triggers come from outside of ourselves in the form of different sounds, we can learn to deal with them through metacognitive therapy so we're not bothered by them in the long term. Or whether these triggers come from within ourselves in the form of thoughts and feelings that we're so bothered by, we can learn to deal with them so that we don't spend hours and hours getting bogged down by them and end up not being able to function. So, question is, could we use this approach to deal with misophonia? And I think the answer is yes. So let's go back to how I experienced it and what I did from a metacognitive therapy perspective to deal with my triggers, with my sound triggers. I experienced this trigger when I was working. I was working from my computer, I was writing emails, I was writing stuff, and I was really concentrated when this person around me would make a certain noise. And I would feel incredibly angry. So what I did was to try to understand a little bit more what was going on. So I tried to really become more aware of my emotional reaction. I tried to notice what I was feeling exactly. Was it anger? Was it frustration? Was it agitation? Was it stress? What was it exactly? And then I tried to localize where it was placed in my body. Was I feeling this feeling in my chest? Was I feeling it in my stomach? Was I feeling it in my shoulders, in my head? So I really tried to be mindful and become more aware of what was going on. And I noticed that I was actually feeling powerless, and I felt frozen and unable to move and do anything. I felt unable to listen to the sound and still be able to focus back on the work that I was doing. Then I also asked myself, I wonder if I'm having any thoughts. And I did have some trigger thoughts in the lines of, make it stop, please make it go away. Why is this happening? Why is this person doing this? I cannot function, I cannot concentrate. Which then led me to think whether there was a belief that was being activated in the back of my mind. And when we talk about beliefs in metacognitive therapy, we talk about metacognitive beliefs. Now, metacognitive beliefs are beliefs about our thinking, how our thoughts, our feelings, our thinking works. Metacognitive beliefs are not beliefs about, like, I'm worthless, or my partner is annoying, or the world is a bad place. Metacognitive beliefs only relates to our thinking, like, I cannot stop worrying, or I cannot control my attention, or my thoughts are dangerous. These type of beliefs are called metacognitive beliefs. And in metacognitive therapy, they are very, very important, because if we believe that, like for example, I cannot focus on my work so long I am feeling so angry, or so long I'm feeling powerless, well, that belief is not going to make me put any real effort in trying to refocus on the work that I'm doing while I'm also having this trigger, this sound that's bothering me. Luckily, we're only talking about a belief. So a belief is something that we came to believe in at some point in our lives. Just like we can choose to believe in God, or we can choose to believe in Buddhism. We can also choose to believe in certain things about how our mind works. And one of the things that we commonly tend to believe in is that we cannot control our attention, or we cannot control how much we dwell on something. So in the case of misophonia, it could be something in the lines of, I cannot stop analyzing how annoyed I am by this sound. I cannot stop ruminating about how terrible this is, or how I want to kill this person. Or I cannot refocus my attention back to writing this email so long I am feeling angry or frustrated. So these beliefs need to be challenged in therapy in order for us to rediscover that, of course, we can refocus our attention the way we want, and of course we can stop dwelling, ruminating, and worrying about negative triggers, negative thoughts, negative emotions. So what have we learned so far? Probably when a sound triggers us, we may have specific thoughts. We call them trigger thoughts in metacognitive therapy. It could be, make this stop, this is terrible, this person is an idiot for doing that, they're doing it on purpose. And we will experience different emotions. In my case, it was feeling powerless, feeling frozen, and then feeling angry. In your case, it could be anxiety, it can be feeling disgust, it can be feeling very angry. So those thoughts and feelings are, of course, very fleeting. Feelings are fleeting, they come and go. Feeling angry in one moment does not mean that the anger is going to last forever. It will go away on its own. This is what the brain does. This is something that we're capable of. It is called self-regulation. Now, what's interesting is, so these thoughts and feelings in themselves are not problematic. Just like when we go on about our lives and suddenly we experience an intrusive thought, that's very, very uncomfortable. Most of us know that these thoughts are only brief. They come up, pop up, and then they go away on their own. The same thing, I think, applies when we experience different sounds that we don't like. So whenever we, let's say, hear someone chewing loudly and we hate that sound, we will feel triggered by the sound. We may feel annoyed, we may feel disgusted, we may feel stressed and anxious, but that's not problematic in itself. What is problematic is whether we do believe that we can refocus and move on with life rather than getting bogged down and unable to move on and do anything. So in most cases I've heard is that I cannot work, I cannot do the things that I really want, that I think are important when I'm hearing this sound. And this could be due to having a metacognitive belief that we cannot stop focusing on this sound. We cannot stop focusing on these feelings that this sound provokes. And it makes sense why we would go to great length to try to avoid these sounds, to avoid these people, to try to do something else, change job, change studies, and so on. So the question is, does it all come down to whether we believe in our ability to shift focus away from hearing these sounds instead of getting bogged down by them, instead of getting caught up in rumination, in angry rumination, in worry, in trying to avoid these sounds? So if we can change our focus away from these sounds, away from these emotional reactions, how much of a problem would it be to hear annoying sounds once in a while? I do think that we as human beings do get, and that it is very normal to get bothered by different sounds. I'm not sure if there's an evolutionary explanation behind this or if it's just very, very random. I'm not sure about that. But I think it's very normal for most people to be bothered by different sounds. Just like we experience intrusions, just like we have trigger thoughts and our feelings fluctuate from feeling great, from feeling nothing, from feeling low, I think hearing sounds that bother us is part of being human and is very normal. Now, developing misophonia based on that can be due to us not believing in our ability to refocus away from them and be able to move on with our lives despite feeling intense emotional reactions. This was my hypothesis, and I tried this on myself. So I tried to use a couple of MCT strategies on myself when I was bothered by this sound. So this is what I did. First thing I did was to become more aware, like really become more aware of what was going on. What was it that I was feeling? Exactly what feeling was this? And where was I feeling it? And the second thing, which I think is very, very important, is that I allowed myself to have this feeling. I didn't try to analyze my way out of this. I didn't try to think about how I would kill this person because they were so annoying when they make the sound. I didn't try to put on earphones to block the sound out. I didn't try to avoid. Instead, I just allowed myself to feel this feeling and instead refocus my attention back to the work that I was doing. So I was doing these two things at the same time. I allowed myself to feel this feeling in my body and let it be there so long it wanted to. It was definitely not comfortable. But by doing that, I freed up a lot of energy to be able to try to slowly refocus back on the work that I was doing. Was it perfect? No, of course not. I was distracted every 3 seconds, and I had to do the same thing. Acknowledge the feeling that I was having, allow myself to have the feeling rather than try to make it go away, and then instead of analyzing or think of ways I could avoid, I just tried to refocus back on the work that I was doing and tried to type out that email or write that chapter. When I did that, I slowly started challenging this belief that I have control over my attention despite feeling very powerless, despite feeling very angry, and despite hearing this sound in the background. And you can do the same thing. So before you try these things out for yourself, do make sure that you seek a specialist or your doctor to rule out anything else that might be going on. And then you can experiment and test out whether you have some beliefs. You have some metacognitive beliefs that you do believe in very much, which then works to prevent you from refocusing your attention and move on with life instead of getting bogged down by these sounds and this emotional reaction that you're having. So if you do struggle with certain sounds and you get very intense emotional reactions from them, here's what you can do. 1, try to become more aware of what is going on. So what exactly are you noticing? Instead of trying to run away or try to distract yourself by thinking about something else or fantasize about how you make that sound go away, try instead to just notice what is going on with you. Are you feeling a certain feeling? Where are you feeling that feeling? Are you having certain thoughts that come along with this feeling? Second step is to change your goal. Instead of trying to get rid of that emotional reaction that you're having, instead of trying to get rid of the anger or disgust or anxiety, try instead to allow yourself to have it. Just like if you've done exercise and you're feeling very worked up, and you're just allowing your body to take care of that. So you're not really doing anything. Once you've been running very fast and you stop, you're not trying to actively calm your body down. You're just letting your body do its thing, and at some point it will calm down. So this is the same principle you can apply to having strong emotional reactions. So just let your body do its thing. Let yourself feel what you're feeling and don't try to make it go away. And the third thing, try to move on with the thing that you were doing. So if you went to the kitchen to make coffee and you got triggered by your partner making these loud chewing noises, and you got triggered and experienced intense anger, try to allow yourself to feel that anger and refocus your attention on moving on and making coffee while you're experiencing the anger. Okay? So the goal is not, I need to make my partner go away, I need to make this feeling go away before I can make coffee. It is can I experiment having this intense anger and still focus most of my attention to making coffee at the same time? Doing that and repeating that, of course, it's a slow process. You need to challenge this belief that you cannot focus on other things while you're feeling intense emotional reactions. But by slowly doing that and repeating that, you can challenge this belief you're having about not being able to control your mind, not being able to control your attention. Another thing which I think is very important to notice is how much time do you spend outside of the triggering situation focusing on or dwelling on the misophonia. One of the viewers told me that in anticipation to encountering this sound, they would worry prior to it. But we do know from metacognitive therapy that worrying prior to a triggering situation or analyzing afterwards is gonna increase the risk of you getting more triggered and getting more intense emotions in that situation. So if you're working at a noisy environment, in an office where there's a lot of noise and you're very bothered by that, worrying about it before you get to work and analyzing what you can do afterwards, it is only going to increase the risk that you will get triggered and get emotional reactions whenever you are in the office. So see if you're spending a lot of time before and after these situations, so outside of these situations, on focusing on what's going on trying to problem solve, or engaging in fantasies about how you would destroy that place or that person. Of course, I know you wouldn't mean any harm. But if you're spending a lot of time outside of the triggering situation in anticipation, in worry, rumination, engaging in fantasies about how you would avoid that situation altogether, try to reduce that focus, try to reduce that thinking. Try to postpone doing that for only half an hour every day instead of spending all your day doing that. I did experience this. So as I was doing this research on myself, I was doing a great deal of analysis because I needed to understand what was going on, and I needed to think about the different theories that I had read on and think about MCT theory to see how these things fitted together. So as a cause of that, I did a great deal of analysis, which actually made me even more prone to get triggered and more bothered by these sounds than I was ever before. This also proves to me that dwelling too much on something, focusing too much on something, in this case, an annoying noise, can actually make matters worse. So again, notice what's going on, allow that feeling to stay there, try to challenge this belief that you cannot function, you cannot do anything else while you're feeling this way, and repeat that. And also try to reduce the amount of time you spend thinking and dwelling on how terrible this is for you. So as I mentioned earlier, there's barely any research on MCT, on misophonia. So I would like to dive a bit more deeper into this and understand this more, and you can help me figure that out. So if you're interested in participating in research, click this link below that I have in the description and read about a study that I am going to make about misophonia and whether MCT theory can explain how to deal with misophonia. So if you're interested in participating and contributing to research so we can find out how MCT can help treat misophonia effectively, click the link below in the description and then go in and fill out a couple of questionnaires about misophonia based on your experiences. Later on in the process, I would like to interview some of these participants to dive deeper into their experience with misophonia. And hopefully that can help you deal with misophonia in a more effective way so it doesn't become a debilitating condition that prevents you from living a full and meaningful life. Thanks for watching.